Hey all, in this video I'm going to be looking at a BrickFair GBC workshop kit, first release at BrickFair Virginia 2019. The kit in question is this one in front of us, the compact Cardan lift designed by myself. So first up I'm going to have a look at, we'll have a look at the outside of this box, then I'm going to go through, have a look at an actual pre-built module and go through some design tips on if you're building it from instructions. Then we'll actually unbox this and have a look at all the goodies inside before I spend a bit of time building it. So first things first, let's have a look at the box. If you've ever bought a LEGO Technic set, you'll notice this looks very similar, and that is very much because the box design is a homage to all the things I love about LEGO and some of the cool things they do in their box design. So we've got things like the multi-language down the front, piece count, we've got this little age limit, 8 to 99. Interestingly, we see this text here that says sample image kit color, and we see this red dot, and that'll make more sense in a little bit. All right, so if I turn it down to this side, we can see we've got the little disclaimer talking about where all the parts are made, another sample image text again, and we have this actual size. And if I get a real 40-tooth gear and hold it up, it's the same size, and it was definitely designed to be like that. But that was one of those things I didn't really know until after we had one of the boxes in our hand. If we then come down here, flip it the other direction and have a look at the bottom, we've got the little disclaimer saying that we are not affiliated with the LEGO group. We are just sort of fans of their work. And we have this barcode. Now this barcode contains an Easter egg related to one of the very early people in Great Ball Contraption. I definitely recommend you scanning that with a barcode reader and having a look at some of the cool stuff, having a look at what's written in there. If we come a look around at this side, very simple. This one just has, not much, just has a kit color. So if you do something like this where you've got a little tag that specifies the inner color, definitely put it in more than one place, because when you stack these boxes, you're going to kind of stack them flat, and this allows you to see that color all the time. If we come around to the last edge, we just have a little bit, the choking hazards warning, and a little bit about BrickFair Fan Expo itself. All right, so let's come back to the front and we'll flip once, flip twice, and we get round to the back. So the text down here is basically saying, for this workshop kit at BrickFair, we produced it in 4 colors, and we chose to produce it in the 4 colors of BrickFair itself. So we see the logo up here, the red, yellow, blue, green, and if we have a look down here, we've got the same red, yellow, blue, and green. So if you ever do design a workshop kit, certainly something to keep in mind. And one thing I would say is people like to bling workshop kits, and by bling I mean they like to customize them. So this one wasn't as customized as some of years previous, but it's still like the colors you can do. There's about 15 different colors you can build this in without changing the design at all. So that was the box for this year's workshop kit. Let's have a look at an actual module. All right, so this is the module. This is a module I prepared earlier. And we can see it in action. It's actually using the Cardan mechanism. You can read more about my design process and all the different revisions that went through to get to production on my website, lawrieg.com. And there's a little diagram that talks about the Cardan mechanism itself. The module itself is designed to be quite simple. Well, it's designed to be simple to build for a Cardan mechanism. So to get this mechanism to work, some timing is required. So there's a relationship between when this piston is up, when this gear relationship, and this gear relationship here. So when you actually build the module, there'll be these little inserts in the instruction manual. Now the printed booklet only has the top one. So what I've done on the instructions that are released on my website, lawrieg.com, is I've added these as addendums to the 1.95 instructions, which is what this version here is. The box edition is 1.95, and then the 1.10 version, these are just baked right into the instructions. And what this is sort of talking about is timing. So it's saying that when I'm doing this relationship where this little piston should be up, and we can see the non-friction pin at the top here, then this should be straight. So in the original instructions, I only had the top. Now we have this sort of bad diagram as well, where it shows this is a little bit offset and this is bent. So if I get the actual module itself, it's basically, so if that's a little bit bent, then when I try and fix the timing for this piston, it's going to be wrong. So anytime I do timing on this module, this should be straightened out. Now, on that, I had a great suggestion from someone that built it, and you can create this little brick plate tile spacer. Doesn't have to be too wide, can be one wide. And if you drop that in here, like so, then you can actually push this down. So this kind of acts as a third hand anytime you're doing timing, and you can kind of leave this brick on right until the end. So, and I will do just that. So we've got a couple more of these diagrams that talks about timing. Once again, it's basically saying this needs to be in line, and when I'm doing this gear relationship up here, it needs to be as close as possible without stressing the gears. So if I can kind of sneak in there, a little difficult to see. So these aren't quite touching, but they're pretty close. And if you're having a bit of trouble with this, it's possible that you've got this one tooth out. Being only 16 teeth, one tooth is enough for the timing to be out, and that's just plain unfortunate. Really tried to make this as simple as possible, but it does mean that, yeah, if you get this one tooth out, you'll find it's not sort of going a bit too far one way or not going far enough the other way. So it's just sort of a case of slipping this apart, and then you can sort of come back and fix the timing up again. So then we get on to these diagrams. These aren't in the original instructions at all. Didn't quite realize, I think most of us who did the design and testing had some technical knowledge and knew that this little connector here, the way the axle is in the inside, only lines up with one of the connections. The other two are off at an angle. And what that meant when people assembled it, and we're talking about this little assembly here at the end, is they would get these kind of, most often this one was correct, but this second one would be out sort of on one of the angles. So the first infographic is basically saying with this flat, and which is kind of like that in relation to the camera, this axle should be pointing up. The second one, when we're looking at that, is basically saying that same axle should be pointing down. And that's when we've kind of lined it up like so. So did actually take some time to try and make this as simple as possible, but the compound angles and people not realizing the importance of this connector did give people a little bit of trouble. Now we'll just have a look at the last piece of timing. And we've got another one of these. Once again, the instructions is only the top diagram. If you download the digital instructions, these will be addendums to the 1.95, and they're included in the 1.10 revision. So once again, it's kind of saying it had this, it looks, people were like, oh, it's meant to be touching. But then they were looking at it like this and they're going, oh, there's lots of clearance. So what's actually going on is if you line this up and it's exactly square, then they do look like they're touching. So it's just meant to be quite close like this, and there's a little bit of slack, and that kind of comes from the 8-tooth gears. It means there's not many angles here when you're working on these. So last things before we get on to the unboxing, after we actually clocked up over 100 hours of testing on this, built quite a few different sort of test versions, ran them at a few conventions, and yeah, made a bunch of improvements to it. However, GBC being GBC, when we actually sat down and built 100 of these as kits, put 30 of them on the table, we found a couple of new issues that were worth improving. So the first is a real simple one, and it was a bit of a strange problem to have, but what we would have is, so the tables must have been just a little bit this way, and this is exaggerated, but what it would mean is a ball would drop in here and roll into this nice little wedge created by the motor, and then when this cam came around, it would jam on top of the ball. So now we can see, and this is just to highlight the difference in the instructions, they're not pink. There's this little 2x2 slope here, and what that means is the ball hits that and rolls out just enough so that when that piston comes around, it catches it and moves it out of the way. The second one is a structural change. So when you build it, you'll already build the piston brace down this side, and that kind of has worked. I've had like over 20 hours in one of the test options where that was never a problem. But what we found is once you get around the kind of 30-hour mark, you'll have issues with the clutch power here. And what we found for some reason, even in some of the brand new builds, there were still issues with clutch power. So this is a patch per se where we add this additional thin lift arm, keeps these bricks together and stops the 16 tooth and the 8 tooth from separating. And if they separate just enough, the top forks lose timing and just become, it just becomes annoying. So, and if we have a look at the diagram here, that's this patch here. Once again in pink, just to highlight the difference. So just a couple of a connector change here, and this thin lift arm just holds the whole assembly all together. I'll just turn it on quickly so we can have a quick look at it actually running. There we go. So we can see the mechanism here. It comes down, it picks up the balls, and it moves along to the next module. So these kits are all produced by fans, for fans. So I spent many hundreds of hours designing, doing digital designs, designing boxes, designing booklets. The parts were ordered by BrickFair and then they're sort of sold at cost back to the fans. And what it means is the boxes are also packed by fans. In this case, a very diligent man by the name of Mr. Stuart Roll. I'm very thankful to him for packing. I was in 2 or 3 states away from where all this was happening, so I really just kind of got to provide moral support from a distance. So the packing was all done by him. He packed a considerable amount of these for the BrickFair shows that are upcoming. So we open it up and we see the printed instruction booklet. Let's have a quick look at that. This is a 68 page instruction manual. Part of that is the format, the size kind of made it a bit bigger. And the reason for it's this size is there was a symbiotic relationship so that it would sit flat in the box. So we'll open this up. Let's have a look at the first couple of pages. So first thing first, it was designed for the BrickFair LEGO Fan Festival events. And once again, a special thanks to Todd Webb, the owner and runner of BrickFair, Stuart Roll and Tom Atkinson for the opportunity, as well as Casey Ross and Brian Bell for testing and suggestions. So without these people, this kit would certainly not have come to fruition. I'm very thankful for their support in helping get this module to a buildable and presentable state. Then we've got a little introduction here, talks about the Cardan mechanism. And what's nifty about a Cardan mechanism is it takes rotary motion and converts it to linear motion without the use of a sort of a slide or a piston. So there's been a few different GBC Cardan modules, but this is a unique design by me. Just another take on this classic, very interesting gear design. Have always been fascinated with it. After that, we get straight into the instructions, and we start to see we have these unique color keys here. So what these first couple of pages are telling me is that I only need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different elements, and I can actually make 4 different bins. And in actual fact, it's around 13 or 15 different colors without changing any of these bricks. And if I want a few more eclectic colors like coral and things like that, I actually have to sort of swap out a few more parts. After that, we're straight into the instruction. So let's skip right to the end, because you're going to see this in the slow version when I'm building it. And so right at the end, we put on the motor, and then we've got a couple of pages talking about the parts in the book. And then we have the last page, which is very much like the back of the box. And in terms of designing it all, the box actually came, the box design kind of came first, and then we did the covers of the booklet. So inside the box, we have all these nice little baggies. Let's take this one out first, because I know this one to be the Lego motor. Then we have a bag of plates, 1 and 2 by with plates. We got a nice little baggie of gears here. Pins, including the 2 orange balls that are included in the kit. We have a whole bunch of grey Technic brick, some Technic plate and some more Technic brick. We have lift arms, and lucky last we have the colour bag. So with the exception of this bag, if I put that to one side, all these other bags are actually common. So every one of the kits that was produced, these parts are all common, and it's just this one bag here of color parts that actually makes a difference. And this is what allowed us to produce in 4 different colors, that we spent a little bit of extra time sort of, you know, reducing the amount of elements that were used in the kit, which meant we could sort of expand out the number of colors available for people building it. And certainly made it very interesting when we put it on the table and we had all the colors available. So let's get down to building it. And we'll notice on the front of the booklet, version 1.95. So this was the version that went to print. Up on my website, I actually have version 1.10. That includes a couple of updates to some infographics on the inside, as well as a couple of patches to the design right in the last stages. So there we can see just at this first page here, you can see the different colors. I'm building the red, so that means when I see the white bricks up here, it means I'm actually looking for red bricks. This here is an interesting example of the element reduction. So this would probably be better as a 1x2 and a 1x3. However, in order to keep the element count low, we've done it with a 1x1 and two 1x2s. So you'll see a little bit of that as we get through. There'll be like a couple of 1x1s next to each other. There'll be a couple of 1x2s next to each other, and that's just about keeping the element count a lot lower. probably one of the things I was not expecting is for people to mix up these two pins. This is what's called a friction pin. This means when I put it in here, it doesn't spin, whereas this light grey one here is a non-friction pin, and when I put it in, it spins. And we had a couple of people who built the module who I don't think had ever built Technic before, and were swapping these two around, not realising the difference. So I had to do a couple of corrections there. So if you are building, this is friction, this is non-friction. You will only see these on the moving parts, and these will be used on the non-moving. Alright, so this is the first of the sub-assemblies. You'll see these little diagrams here, which are sort of showing you build this first, and then this is an action arrow, so it's saying build this and then push it into the main assembly. So let's do that. These are a Technic bush. You'll find that one has kind of lumpy sides, and that is in the old days of Technic, they used to put these in here like this, so they didn't turn. These days, not used so often, but if you ever do use them, the smooth edge should always be against the running surface. So that is all correct in the booklets. You'll see that the lumpy edge is always away from the running edge. So when I put this on here, it will be facing inward away from this edge. This is the first of the axle size guides. If you are designing booklets and you set the page up size up correctly, when you do the little one-to-one things, you can just hold the axle straight on top. I have got a little number up here for convenience, 6, but we can also just drop it straight on there and know it's the right size. This is that little helper people can use, so they can, say, brick, a plate and a tile. I could simply put this in here, like so. Oh, one more down, like so. Push this onto it, and it actually gets this straight enough so that when I'm coming around here and checking this, that it does look just like the diagram. This is the motor drive axle, and I like to use stop axles on my motors so that when I pull them out, so when you unplug the motors have quite a bit of clutch power on axles, and when you unplug the motor, it doesn't pull the axle out because the motor's clutch power is more than the actual fuel's clutch power. And what that means is anytime you use like just a plain 5 long in here, as soon as I pull the motor, it's going to pull it out of this little A-tooth. So putting a little end stop here stops that from happening. Also means when you push the motor in, if it comes out a little, you can just push that back in like so. So we do use a clutch gear in this module. It can help stop certain failures from occurring. If you are building this from parts at home, if you don't have it, it's not a big deal if you leave it out. Just make sure everything's running freely and the module will still work fine. So you'll notice this next step down we're about to do is a 8-tooth to a 16. You can only do it in certain special scenarios, so you can't do 8 to 16 straight like that. You have to kind of do this brick stepping in technique. It means the mesh isn't quite as neat as it would be in some other scenarios, but it gives you a nice 1 to 2 drop down. And I notice I've got this backwards, so let's fix that up. So in the instructions, you'll occasionally see little symbols like this, and this is called a flip symbol. So we'll notice in this way, the module's looking like this, and we'll see this little symbol, and it means I've flipped it back around like this. Just a little visual clue that you may need to turn what you're building around to match what you're seeing. So this is another key part to building it. It's quite difficult to try and represent this in the instructions. But basically, because I can see this line up here quite bold, it means that when I'm looking at my clear panel, it means that the smooth side, not the side with the dip, actually faces in. So I'll just put that down there like so. Yeah, so the dip is on the outside and the smooth bit is on the inside. So some may consider that this is a little bit, might consider this a design fault, that clips off, but it can also be classed as a design feature because it allows, if the module before it is a little bit short, you can just take this whole section off. and run it straight into it. But for now, let's put that back on. Oh, and here we have a little finger symbol, and that just means this should be nice and loose. This is our second piece of timing, so we need to make sure that on the back this is all straight, and then we're going to slide this on. In fact, we can actually join this together just a little. Just get it started, slide that right the way in, make sure it's straight, let this drop all the way down, and mesh it with the 16th tooth like that. Alright, this is our next timing diagram. So what we want to see is that we want to rotate this until this is pointing up in relation to the square of the axle when that's on, like so. So that would be flat, and this axle will be pointing directly up, just like this bottom image here. Alright, stage 2 of the timing. So once again, we want this axle pointing down in relation to the rest. So let's get this turned around and square that up. And get our little three-way connector and then rotate it there. There we go. So that is pointing down for that. And here we are at the last of the timing. So it should look very similar to this top diagram, which means this should be straight again. Got a little helper in there, which means that can be straight. So I'm going to slide that in. Looking pretty good. Yeah, alright, I'm actually just going to take this out. Excellent. Alright, So in this last diagram, we've got the finger again, and what that's saying is that this should be loose. So see how this is a little bit stiff? So I just wriggle this a little. This should be should be nice and flexible, because if it's too stiff, it'll actually stop there, and it needs the little bit of slack, and the gravity helps it just shift over that last little bit. And now we're on to the last step, putting the motor in. So that was the BrickFair 2019 and the first couple of shows in 2020. It was available at BrickFair Virginia 2019. It'll be available at BrickFair New Jersey 2019, BrickFair Alabama 2020, and BrickFair North Carolina 2020. Certainly, if you are going to those conventions, check it out and get hold of one if you're interested in building it. The instructions for this are up available on my website at lawrieg.com. Both the 195, which is exactly the way it comes in the box, and my version 1.10.0, which includes a couple of small tweaks that didn't quite make it into the production kit. Thanks for watching, and I look forward to making more videos.